The grandson of the former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, Mandla Mandela, has released a video claiming that he was abducted by the Israeli state on Thursday, the 2nd of October, 2025.
My name is Cyril Ramaphosa. I'm a citizen of the Republic of South Africa. If you are receiving this video, it means that we have been intercepted and have been abducted by the apartheid state of Israel. I call on you to request our government to exert pressure for my immediate release.
Interception of the flotilla. We go back to Madison Bannon. She's activist and organizer managing digital content with the Global Sumud Flotilla, South Africa, specifically that delegation. Madison, good afternoon yet again. Firstly, the state of those who are on the flotilla, are they safe?
Thank you so much for having me. So what happens when a boat is intercepted by the Israeli Navy is that they cut all communications and the activists throw their phones overboard into the ocean. So they started intercepting around 9 p.m. That boat was called the Alma. That's when they took Nkosi Mandela. He had already thrown his phone overboard the night before after Israeli intimidation. But we can expect a communications blackout from that moment of interception until the activists are with their lawyers. We have lawyers inside occupied Palestinian territory, friendly lawyers, that will meet with them and then help them work through their next options. So we're expecting a communication blackout for at least 12 hours. We're past 12 hours from Nkosi's interception now, and there have been more interceptions since, so we're waiting until we can get a hold of their lawyers, or their lawyers will get in touch with us and their families.
So you are as much in the dark as we are. At least the only thing that we all have seen is just that video on social media, which purportedly is those of Israeli forces who have surrounded some of those who were on the flotilla. Is that all you know at this point?
So we were watching the feed since yesterday. So I actually found 10 a.m. one of our activist boats being intercepted. It was a small sailboat with about 8 activists on it being approached by a large Israeli military vessel. And then their comms were cut. We've had reports of further interceptions of other boats, but we don't have direct communication with the activists until they are with their lawyers.
And what was the route to be taken to ensure the aid actually makes it to the enclave? Because this has been emphasized by our correspondent Blake Sifton that we were speaking to a bit earlier, that there was honestly never going to be a time where Israel would have allowed for the passage or safe passage thereof.
Sure. So there have been a number of flotillas since the illegal siege on Gaza began in 2007, one of which has made it actually to Gaza's shore. The intention was always to get as close to Gaza as possible and then to hold a humanitarian corridor so that states could bring in the needed humanitarian aid. The boats themselves are small. They were never going to hold enough aid to make a significant difference for the nutritional value of what people need in Gaza. But the idea was to hold that humanitarian corridor and allow states to follow through with significant aid. The amount of aid needed in Gaza is something like at least 600 trucks worth of aid coming in every single day. There have been thousands and thousands of trucks languishing along the borders of Gaza that Israel has not allowed in. And so this is the most available pathway to get aid in at this point.
All right. Madison, thank you very much.
Now, Mandela was part of the Global Sumud Flotilla campaign, which was heading towards Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid. And we know that activists raised alarms on Wednesday that their boats were being intercepted by Israel in international waters. I do believe that Mandla's boat was in international waters at the time of the interception. And the South African government has released a statement condemning this and asking that Mandla Mandela be immediately released.
The South African government says they are working hard on the ground to rescue citizens that are part of the Global Sumud Flotilla campaign, which is heading to Gaza to deliver humanitarian aid. Now, the grandson of former President Nelson Mandela, Mandla Mandela, has released a video that he has been abducted by the Israeli state. Now, the government has condemned the latest developments. For more on this now, we're joined by SABC News correspondent Blake Sifton for developments on this. So, Blake, this is not the first first time something like this has happened. First the drone strike, then the interception. Let's start with clarity on what we know about this interception so far.
Good morning. That's right. This flotilla has been harassed at regular intervals throughout its journey to Gaza. In terms of the interception, it began late last night. We understand now that at least 21 of the 44 boats of the flotilla have been intercepted and boarded by the Israeli Navy. That leaves still at least 23 boats, and organizers say they will continue to try to make their way to Gaza, although of course they will almost certainly be intercepted. And I should note that interceptions are essentially happening as we're speaking. They've carried on into the morning. Now, in videos we've seen, Israeli naval commandos boarded boats, activists on board live streamed this activity up until the point the commandos approached them and they threw their phones then into the sea. We understand the Israeli Navy used water cannons against several boats, and organizers say at least one boat was rammed. However, there have been no reports of injuries. Hundreds of activists on board the boats that have been seized have been arrested, they've been detained, and they are currently being taken by Israeli Navy ships to the port of Ashdod, where they are expected to be processed and eventually deported, possibly as early as tonight. Of course, this flotilla involved some 500 activists, including Greta Thunberg, Mandla Mandela, as you mentioned, members of parliament from Europe, lawyers, journalists, and others. And they were attempting to deliver humanitarian aid, but also challenge Israel's maritime blockade of Gaza that has been in place since 2009. And while other flotillas in the past have been intercepted and stopped, this was by far the largest flotilla ever assembled, and it presented a unique challenge for the Israeli military.
On that, Blake, how many flotillas have been intercepted? Because now we're also seeing a statement that also came in, presumed, of course, to be from one of the delegates on the flotilla, which reads as follows: "Dear comrades, confirming that the boats of the following delegates have been intercepted and the delegates have been detained are, of course, Nkosizwe Livumila Mandela, as you've just said there, Zugisa Vani, we have Riaz Mullah, and also they are waiting information on Zahira Soma as well as Fatima Hendricks, as the lawyers are on standby to receive them at the Ashdod harbor." Can you expand further on this for us?
At this stage, it's unclear how many boats now have been intercepted. We understand at least 21, but it's possible more have been intercepted, and we just haven't heard about it yet because this really is a developing situation and happening as we speak. In terms of previous flotillas, they were intercepted as recently as June and July by the Israeli Navy. Those were, of course, much smaller than this flotilla, and they were actually intercepted further out off the coast of Gaza than this one. This one was intercepted at some 70 nautical miles from Gaza, and we understand that the other boats that haven't yet been intercepted are as close as 45 nautical miles from Gaza. In May, another boat of a flotilla was damaged by an explosion off the coast of Malta. It never actually reached anywhere near the coast of Gaza. There's been other flotillas in the past before that, most notably and infamously, I should say, of course, is the Mavi Marmara, the Turkish flotilla in 2010 that was boarded by Israeli commandos who descended from helicopters and ended up shooting and killing some 10 Turkish activists. But thankfully, in this instance, in this interception, there's been no reports of injuries, let alone deaths.
And Blake, the flotilla was carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza. What's the latest on the cargo itself? Was it seized, destroyed, or is it still in limbo?
That is a very good question. The Israeli government had said to the activists when they're on their way, you can leave the aid in Cyprus, you can bring the aid to the port of Ashdod, you can divert from the coast of Gaza, and we will deliver it to Gaza for you. The flotilla organizers disputed that. They said they didn't believe it. They said it wouldn't make its way to Gaza. Also,
Okay, we're going to have to cut out of that conversation there with Blake Sifton. I will endeavor to get him back on the line. We apologize for that sound quality there, because that means now you cannot enjoy the full benefit of that report. Blake, so hopefully second time lucky. Let's hear where the cargo is now. Do we know its whereabouts?
So the question of what will happen to this humanitarian aid that the flotilla was trying to bring to Gaza is going to be very interesting. Now, the Israeli government had told the flotilla organizers while they were on their way to Gaza, they could drop their aid in Cyprus, they could bring it to a port in Israel, but they wouldn't let them, of course, breach the coast of Gaza. Now, the organizers refused to do this. They didn't believe that the Israeli government would honor their word. European governments that had sent naval ships to accompany the flotilla in case of an emergency, like Greece, Spain, and Italy, they all said the same. They said, give your aid to the Latin Patriarchy of Jerusalem to deliver. So that hasn't happened. The aid is still on the boats. We understood, however, before this interception that some of these flotilla boats, perhaps the larger ones, would be towed to the port of Ashdod by the Israeli Navy, and the smaller boats, the Israeli Navy might actually sink at sea. So it remains to be seen whether boats with aid will be sunk to the bottom of the Mediterranean, whether they'll be towed with their aid to the port of Ashdod, and if they are, whether that aid will be taken to Gaza. But we also need to remember that when it comes to a lack of humanitarian aid reaching the people of Gaza, it's not for a lack of aid available. It's for these bottlenecks that the UN has said has prevented them from collecting and distributing aid from the border between Gaza and Israel. So even if this aid is taken to Ashdod, does make its way to the border with Gaza, it could be weeks or longer before it actually makes its way into Gaza.
And finally, what's the sense that you are getting on the ground from the international community? Has there been strong condemnation or just silence?
There's been quite strong condemnation. Turkey's foreign ministry called this interception an act of terrorism. The largest union in Italy has declared a general strike tomorrow, Friday, in solidarity with the flotilla. We also heard on Wednesday night from the president of Colombia. He said that if Israel intercepted this flotilla, that he would break off his country's free trade agreement with Israel, as well as expel Israeli diplomats. And Brazil's foreign ministry said that it deplores the Israeli government's military action, which violates rights and endangers the well-being of peaceful protesters.
Blake Sifton is SABC News correspondent, watching developments for us there with his pulse firmly on this developing story. Thanks ever so much for that update.
We know that they were told not to come any closer because there is an active war zone, and that if they had any aid, that it should be dropped off at a point in Cyprus and that it would be delivered to the Palestinian people. Comment below what you think. When I posted this on my TikTok, there were a lot of comments about distractions happening. We know that we are focused as South Africa on the Mandla Commission and what's happening there with the recent assassinations, as well as the death of South African ambassador to France, Nathi Ntwetwa. So what do you think below? Do you think that this is some sort of distraction? Do you think that they should have dropped the aid off in Cyprus? And let's keep it respectful in the comment section, because as South Africans, we can disagree on something without fighting with each other.